Things are starting to pick up in regards to the next generation consoles that will launch on the Xbox side of things. I mean, it's all but confirmed that Xbox is releasing 2 next generation consoles, and there's been a lot of questions surrounding the second console, the Xbox Series S, and how it compares to the Xbox Series X console, which will be the high-end one. Well, those questions seem to have been answered when a new leak came in, going into deep specs of the console and also giving us a real hard look at what we should expect from the Series S. And for me, this not only gives consumers a lot of information to make an informed decision, but it also helps shape the next generation. And that means the actual price of these consoles and what we should expect to see. Now, I will admit the Xbox Series S console is going to be a pretty awesome piece of hardware, and I find the targeted resolution of the console to be a bit of a surprise. But again, Xbox is coming this next generation ready to push certain aspects of what we know the console market to be. So let's get into these specs and see exactly how the Xbox Series S stacks up to the Xbox Series X, because I have a feeling a lot of people that buy a new Xbox Series console will have a pretty great decision to make. Will they go with the high-end Xbox Series X, where they will get their games at the highest fidelity outside of a high-end PC, or will they go with the affordable Series S, where they can get into next-generation gaming with a pretty awesome piece of hardware at an affordable price? Either way, let's get into this article and these specs that were posted by insiders and talk about the Xbox's next big generation. But first, like always, if you liked the video, hit that subscribe button and that like button. The support is greatly appreciated. Now, the first thing I want to say is that these comparison specs were posted by Tom Warren, who's a very well-respected insider of the industry. He has his ear to the ground and usually gets a lot of things he posts right. That's because he has trusted sources and probably because Microsoft gives him the information so he can post it. That's where a lot of this information is coming from, and it's going to surprise some people. But again, the Xbox Series S, or better known as the Xbox Lockhart console, has been detailed a lot. But nothing has been confirmed, and not a lot of people are talking about it because Microsoft and Xbox hasn't said anything official about the console. But that doesn't stop us from looking at these specs and maybe even speculating on a price the console could come in at. But most of all, I want to know how it stacks up to the Xbox Series X, and if there's going to be a market for the console. Here's what the article starts off by saying. With the constant leaks of Microsoft's budget next-gen console Xbox Series S, many have been wondering if the console's rumored 4 teraflop GPU is real or not. Reacting to a rather comprehensive spec sheet of the Series S compared to the high-spec Xbox Series X by Tweaktown, The Verge's Tom Warren revealed some key information regarding the Xbox Series S GPU. And the spec sheets, the Xbox Series X GPU is correctly labeled as a Navi 2X GPU with 52 RDNA 2.0 compute units clocked in at 1.825 GHz. In comparison, the Xbox Series S GPU was simply described as a Navi RDNA 2.0 GPU. Now, this is where the information starts to take shape, and it's going to unveil a lot of the same things people have been saying about the console, which is the Series S console will come in at almost 4 teraflops of power. Here's what the article continues to say. Warren took to Twitter to expand upon the spec sheets, confidential, stating that the lower spec console would have 20 compute units at 1.550 GHz. That would bring the device to 3.97 teraflops in comparison to the Series X's 12. So I understand the reaction some people will have to this console. I mean, why get a console that has 4 teraflops of power when last generation, the Xbox One X, is at 6 teraflops, and to top it all off, the Xbox Series X will have 12 teraflops of power. And while the numbers can be confusing, the most interesting aspect of this is the architecture that the new console will be built in. That's where the magic truly comes, and why these next generation consoles by Xbox are going to be worth every single penny we spend on them. No matter what console you get, the Series S or the Series X, it's going to be a quality product that gives you high-end gaming. One will just be far more powerful and bring the best possible fidelity to your games no matter what console you get. Yes, even the Ps5, it just can't stand up to the power of the Xbox Series X. But everybody knows that because it's been reported for what seems like months now. But what hasn't been reported is a direct comparison between the Series X console and the Series S console. But now we finally have a comparison thanks to Tom Warren. So let's dive into it and see how they stack up. So the first thing up is the GPU power, which if you look here, the Series X will have 12.15 teraflops of power, while the Series S will have 4 teraflops of power. Like the article points out earlier, that's something that a lot of people figured out would happen, but now with this comparison, it's just another insider confirming what we already knew. After that, we have the SoC, where it's very similar, and of course it would be, where both consoles come in with 7nm enhanced SoC. Now this is where things get very interesting for me, which is the CPU, because for me the CPU is going to single-handedly be the biggest upgrade of these systems, minus the SSD of course. It's a huge reason a lot of these consoles and games can perform at 60 FPS or even 120 FPS like we all have been asking for. And if you look at the CPU, it's going to be the same on both consoles. That's huge. Both consoles have an 8-core 16-thread Zen 2 CPU at 3.8 GHz. I can't express how big of a deal this is because it does make the Series S not only a future-proof console, but long gone are the days of having a bottleneck Jaguar CPU holding developers and consoles back. I love the fact that Xbox didn't take the cheap route on this console. Just because it's a more affordable console and not going to play games at 4K resolution at 60 FPS, they could have cut corners or certain aspects of it. I'm glad they didn't do it with the CPU, which is going to be a massive advancement for gaming in general. But next up is the GPU, where we talked about this earlier. We can see here that the Series X will have a Navi 2X GPU with 52 RDNA 2.0 CUs at 1.825 GHz. All the while, the Series S will just have a Navi RDNA 2.0 GPU at 20 CUs at 1.550 GHz. Again, we all know that the Series X will have the most powerful GPU in any console on the market, not to mention the most powerful CPU on the market. And while the Series S will be less powerful, it will still have the RDNA 2 architecture, which is the best thing it could have. So let's hope that it helps push certain aspects of the next generation. Then we have the RAM, which is going to be 16GB GDDR6 RAM on the Series X, along with 10GB at 560GB a second and 6GB at 336GB a second. As for the Series S, we will get 10GB GDDR6 RAM. Now this is something I like to see because 10GB is plenty of RAM for a smaller form factor console like the Series S. Up next is the performance target, where we all know the Series X is going to be a 4K 60 FPS or 8K gaming machine, the standard of all consoles on the market. But what surprises me is the 1440p 60 FPS that the Series S is targeting, because for me I always figured it would be a 1080p 60 FPS machine. So I'm actually happy they're going for the 1440p crowd and also pushing the frame rates at 60 FPS or even 120 FPS on certain games. This to me is the biggest surprise of the comparison, and I'm happy to see the target resolution because as a hardcore gamer, I'm done with 1080p screens and I'm certainly done with 30 FPS games. Next up is the storage, in which the Series X will have a 1TB PCIe 4.0 SSD at 2.4GB a second uncompressed and 4.8GB a second compressed. It's going to be an extremely fast SSD that will compete with anyone else. And the Series S says it will have a PCIe 4.0 SSD, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's less than 1TB to save cost. But who knows, this one is a little bit of an unknown when it comes to the SSD and the storage that's going to be in the Xbox Series S. Next is the backwards compatibility, which again, both say they will all play Xbox One games, support Xbox 360 games, OG Xbox games, and next-gen support. This is something that we all knew would happen, especially since Xbox has been pushing this back compat narrative for years now. And it's going to be a massive feature on the console their competitors just can't compete with. Next is the MSRP. Again, we all know this. The Series X is the higher end and aims to be the Xbox One X of this next generation. It's for the enthusiast priced. And the Series S is the lower end and aims to be the Xbox One S of the next generation and is going to be the budget-friendly console. Then we have the power consumption, which the Series X is 250 to 300 watts, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. And of course, the Series S is going to be less than 250 watts. And last but not least, we have the disk drive, which the Series X will have a 4K UHD Blu-ray drive along with the Blu-ray drive and a DVD drive. All the while, the Series S will not have a disk drive, and we already knew that because it will cut costs of the system, and that's something that Xbox really wants to do. They want to make the Series S be extremely affordable. But there you have it, everyone. As you can see, the comparison is pretty nice and gives us some information we didn't know about the console, especially the CPU side for me, which has been rumored to be the same for a little while, but to see Tom Warren tweet this comparison out and talk about the CPU along with the performance target, it shows the console is going to actually give us an experience we never saw before. And to be honest, I'm one of the people that was only going to buy a Series X when it launches, but as the years and generation goes on, I might get a Series S and put it in my other room for my family, especially since it can stream 4K content and also give them a place to play games at a higher resolution and an even higher frame rate. And that to me is the reason this console exists. It's going to be a massive upgrade to the people that are coming from the original Xbox One console, not to mention the people coming for the PS4 or the Xbox One S. They'll not only get the huge bump in resolution at 1440p, but they'll get the biggest CPU bump around with the 60 FPS or 120 FPS that the console is going to be able to do. That's the biggest selling point for me. If the console CPU wasn't the same on the Series X, it would make me question why the console is even being made. But now knowing a lot more of the console, it makes me happy to see that Xbox is going to bring a high quality system for the people getting either console. And to bring this full circle and compare everything, here's what the article had to say about what the PS5 is targeting. In comparison, PlayStation's next-gen PS5 comes in at over 10 teraflops. Of course, teraflops aren't everything. With hardware, ray tracing SSD, more powerful CPUs, and custom-designed hardware, all of these next-gen consoles are shaping up to be beasts. And there you have it, folks. That's everything that was leaked in the last couple of days. I hope you enjoyed the deep dive, and I hope it gave you a better understanding of what each console does. But enough about what I think about this. Tell me what you think about all of this. Does this make you want to buy an Xbox Series S? Which console looks more appealing to you? Are you surprised both consoles have the same CPU? Did the performance target surprise you like it did me? Is the PS5 more appealing to you than the Xbox? How much do you think both consoles will cost? And will you buy both consoles? Go down below and let me know. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please hit that subscribe button and that like button. The support helps out the channel more than you know. And give me a follow on Twitter at Zalker87. I'm always on there talking games and sharing my latest videos. Plus, I love interacting with everyone there, so get on Twitter and let's talk about gaming. Also, follow me on Xbox Live. My gamertag is Zalker87, just like my channel name. See what games I'm playing, and let's compete in achievements for the month. I've honestly been playing a lot of Fall Guys. That game is so addicting. It's so weird and just goofy, and I just really enjoy it. I'm having a lot of fun playing with my friends, and we're just having a good time with it. It's just so weird and competitive at the same time. It reminds me of Rocket League, honestly. I really enjoyed that game, and I found it to be really goofy too, but I ended up loving it and getting super competitive in it. So what is everyone playing? Go down below and let me know. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and until next time, remember, enjoy your gaming. Later.